that an 8? That's an 8.
Yes.
It's a funny looking 8. We gotta work on that 8.
Let me make it bigger. Look, you know how they taught
Okay,
you in
that
school
looks-
with a big two.
That looks
Wait,
more
let me
like
just make sure.
That looks more like it. 15 seconds? All
Yeah, say that at the beginning of my text.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
right. Good evening, Virgin Islands. This is your Senator at Large, Angel Volquez Jr. And want to welcome each and every one of you to the Power to the People radio show. This show is a space where we continue to connect with the people directly. It's a platform for real conversations and updates about the issues that are affecting our daily lives. And the Power to the People radio show exists to inform you about the work that my office has been doing, whether it's our legislation, our public policies, our community resources, and opportunities that obviously affect every Virgin Islander, whether it's families or businesses or seniors or youth. We share facts about solutions that we're working on. And today's show, we're going to be focusing on a number of matters. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on some St. John centric or specific items. First, I want to start off by saying good evening to each and everyone who's listening. And today, we're going to really focus on a number of issues that affect St. John, and if not all of us in some way, shape, or form. First, I want to start off by talking about some of the accomplishments that I've been working on specifically for the island of St. John. As the at-large senator, I have the territorial responsibility of all three islands. However, there are a number of accolades or accomplishments that I've worked on with the help of my colleagues to support the island of St. John. Notably, there are others as well for St. Thomas and St. Croix, but today we're focusing on St. John-centric issues. We appropriated through Act 8696 for the second phase of the Cruise Bay playground on St. John. This is a place where you have a lot of youth recreation and community spaces. It's a beautiful place on St. John that families can go and have their little ones have some fun and learn some of the morals and values that young people learn on the playground as well. We appropriated $2.5 million for the Johnny Horn Road Repair Project. This was appropriated for repairs and drainage improvements, addressing long-standing road safety and flooding issues on the island of St. John. Also, Act number 8696 for $600,000 to buy 2 Type 3 fire trucks for the island of St. John, specifically for the island of St. John. The roads on St. John are a little bit more narrow, a little more steep in comparison to other parts of the Virgin Islands, and the larger conventional fire trucks were not working for our firemen and firewomen who were tasked with the responsibility of extinguishing fires. And these Type 3 fire trucks were very important and are very important to the firefighters of St. John. So they're able to traverse down certain roads that are more narrow or steep that the bigger trucks would have more difficulty traversing through. So that is another accomplishment for the island of St. John. As for Act number 8644 for specific St. John road repairs, almost $600,000 in appropriations for road repairs, maintenance, and accessibility improvements. Some of the improvements were to Fish Fry Road and other roads in St. John. We do have other measures that we're going to be proposing to support other roads on the island. And we're working with the Department of Public Works specifically to come and take a site walkthrough of the island of St. John to review all of the issues with all of the roads on the island of St. John. But for most part, Act 8644 was our appropriation to deal with the roads that were fixed recently. As for one of the biggest and perhaps controversial in some cases, one would say, is the exchange from Act 8741 in order to have The decades-long discussion of over 50 years of introducing a public high school for the children on the island of St. John. Um, I, for one, was not going to hold the children hostage, and they deserve to have a school on that island, and we fought for it. And that is another accomplishment that I put very good as a pin on my jacket to say that we did this for the youth of St. John. Um, there's other accolades that we can talk about, but that school specifically also, when it's built, will be a hurricane shelter, community facility, and a central hub for public use. Um, we have also done a number of efforts, maybe not legislatively, but to work on the issues that affect St. Jonians. Um, Last year, there was a big issue with the custom delays with our federal partners. We had many meetings with them and we were able to resolve that. In addition to the most recent opposing the increase of fees impacting St. John, we conducted a survey in relation to that fee proposal. We did not fight we did not win the entire fight, but we were able to stop some of the fees from going up. But still, and yet, the Port Authority decided to increase those fees. But I was a very advocate against these fees because they changed the cost of living for St. Jonians. And we do have some plans to bring a measure forward that's going to change some of that. And we'll talk about that in a subsequent show. We do a lot of ongoing constituent work in my office. I want people to know that beyond legislation, I've always actively been working on a number of constituents' concerns on St. John, areas that we have been assisting with, to include the rest of the Virgin Islands. But on St. John, we have helped residents with WAPA billing and outage issues. We've helped them with shipping delays and package clearance concerns, with housing and landlord tenant matters, supporting individuals with government services and agency follow-ups, whether it's my office or I reaching out to these agencies to try to get a smoother transition of the quality of service. Working with the healthcare access and service coordination issues, we've assisted small businesses to navigate licensing, permits, and operational challenges that they have issues with. We've also assisted with benefits and support programs as well. So we do a lot of direct engagement in my office. We take a lot of calls, we respond to messages, we go on site visits, we follow up directly with agencies. We make sure that people are not left out when they want answers. So we have a personal type of touch in my office in the sense of a lot of the work doesn't always make headlines, but it matters because it impacts people's everyday lives. We don't necessarily have to boast about all of the things we do, but for those individuals who we've been working with, you know who you are. And we appreciate you for reaching out to our office and asking us to assist you because that's what we do and we want to continue working for you. So those are some of the things that we want to talk about, just a little bit concerning St. John, just so that the record shows that, you know, we work for the entire territory and each island has many concerns. And I haven't even touched on St. Thomas or St. Croix. However, we also want to let's touch on St. Croix for just a second. And I just will actually just place one on the record because I know the Parley Joseph Stadium has been a subject or matter of contention for quite some time. And as of late and recently, right now, we're actually processing the subpoenas for that hearing that we'll be conducting. When is that, Ms. Torres?
Monday, April 20th.
Monday, April 20th. So less than a month from now. And we're moving forward with the subpoena process related to the Parley Joseph Stadium project. This is about getting clear answers and full transparency. And I want to thank my colleagues for supporting the request in session to subpoena the individuals who are the stakeholders for that project, because that project has persisted for far too long. And the people of the Virgin Islands deserve answers, deserve answers right now. So what we're going to do is talk about the delays, the cost concerns. We're going to talk about questions on progress, and they have to be consistent and clear information provided to the public at a point where we can exercise our oversight and take formal action as a legislature. So I'm looking forward to that hearing on April 20th. I would encourage the listening audience to tune in to that hearing, especially for you, those of you who reside on the island of St. Croix. But again, anything that happens in these Virgin Islands affects all of us, no matter if we're separated by water and sea. So I would encourage everyone to please tune into that hearing, because we have the contractor, key of government agencies who are responsible for oversight, and of course the contractor is responsible for construction. So we want you to tune into that. One of the most other recent measures that I was able to move forward with the help of my colleagues is the tax amnesty. Initially, we approved a tax amnesty in Act number 9050, which was proposed by Senator Gittens and supported by the body. However, there was some, how should I put this? Some abnormal issues in the sense of the way that it was implemented. The people of the Virgin Islands did not, in fact, get the full 90 days, and I'll explain. When the act was signed into law by the governor, it was signed in on November either 10th or 11th, and with the 90 days, they included weekends, they included the days for the Christmas festival that were considered to be administrative leave. They included holidays, and I believe also there was some sort of equipment failure that actually happened in between there as well. So the loss of days was somewhere in the range of 33 days or so of missed opportunities for the people of the Virgin Islands to be able to access this tax amnesty and be able to pay their taxes without these penalties. So what we tried to do is to propose a bill to provide them back with the 33 days. However, we did not get the 33 days, we got 15. I would say some is better than none. Reason being, after discussions with my colleagues and other stakeholders, we found that in relation to trying to provide the 33 days, we would have conflicted with the tax filing day, which is April 15th, 2026. So in an effort not to disturb that day, because it's complex and in the way that they provide the service and whatever background functions that take place in IRB, it would have caused too much confusion. Nevertheless, I encouraged the governor to sign that into law. Hopefully he does. And I would say that would be doing the right thing and making sure that the people of the Virgin Islands got somewhere close to the 90 days that they were supposed to get from the original Act 9050. So that's just a small example of a couple of things that we've done in relation to representing our territory, our Virgin Islands. So what I wanted to talk about, and I know it's been a hot topic for everyone, is the state of energy in the Virgin Islands. We know that energy is one of the biggest issues in the Virgin Islands, and I have always done my best to be a real advocate of clean energy solutions. We have done so since the inception, I believe about back in 2023 or 24, I coordinated a meeting with Eaton Energies, Tulip Consultants, the then chair of the Water and Power Authority, Kyle Fleming, and the then CEO, Andrew Smith, and coordinated because I became aware of the first of its kind in Puerto Rico, in Arecibo. They utilized CDBG grant funding 100% to build out a microgrid on the island of Puerto Rico. And I initiated, along with my staff, for everyone that I just called to be a part of that site visit. We coordinated the whole thing, and we were able to go there and look at the 15 megawatt solar system that was paired with battery storage. And this was way before we started any battery storage here in the Virgin Islands. And we learned about how they designed it. Again, this the then chair of WAPA, Kyle Fleming, was on. I invited him to that, and he attended, and we both learned a lot about how these battery storage systems. Kyle probably more than I, because obviously he's an electrical engineer and I'm not. However, for me it was very, very educational. I learned a lot, and we met directly with energy engineers. We met with industry leaders, other government officials from Puerto Rico, Vieques, Culebra, even Florida were there, and of course, Mr. Andrew Smith was supposed to be there, but he did not attend. So the only WAPA leadership that was there was obviously the governing board chair, Kyle Fleming. But the visit actually showed us about microgrids and how they operate independently from the main grid and help prevent widespread outages. They reduce the fuel costs and improve reliability. And it makes you think, because right now St. Croix has the best energy resilience in the Virgin Islands compared to St. Thomas and St. John, because of the sheer fact that St. Croix has more solar panel battery storage systems than the other two islands. It's not perfect, but obviously it's a step in the right direction. And I think Crucians are seeing that their grid is a little bit more reliable than the grid in St. Thomas and St. John. So when we went to that energy microgrid solar panel battery storage at the Ceibo solar farm, it was one of the pivotal points for me, at least as a legislator, to then learn as much as I can. And I came back and I became very, very advocated very, very loudly on what we should be focusing on here in the Virgin Islands, specifically for green energy, solar energy, battery storage. And I'm so happy that the Water and Power Authority moved in that direction, or perhaps they had already was planning to move in that direction. But I think everything just aligned or lent itself to that movement. And I am so happy to see all of the accomplishments that have been made in that area. So, we know that there's the Petronella solar farm, which is producing somewhere between 10 to 15 megawatts on St. Croix, and shifting away from some heavy fuel dependency and lowering long-term energy consumption from fossil to more so utilizing green energy. So we want to go back now to WAPA, and with everything that happened, or is happening, I should say, in the Virgin Islands surrounding WAPA, it's very, very disturbing and concerns me to a level that I believe warrants emergency assistance. And before we get to a point where we as a people, Virgin Islanders, begin to experience negative casualties in the sense of loss of life or issues concerning medical stability, I think it's prudent that we express the importance of moving into or shifting towards a state of emergency concerning energy. When the St. John transmission line went down, I immediately was on the line with a number of people, the CEO of WAPA, the administrator of St. John, other senators, points of contact that deal with vendors concerning energy in the Virgin Islands. And I was on those lines or those calls over and over and over for the span of about 72 to 80 something hours. Not all day, but numerous calls. In those situations, um, you have to spring into action, and springing into action isn't necessarily always um, jumping into the action, but also just trying to facilitate and collaborate and plan and strategize. And I believe that there's a lot more of that that needs to take place because this situation has spiraled into a very unstable issue. While the CEO of the Water and Power Authority has inherited decades long issues and problems that he is now responsible for, I believe he's doing a good job. Some may want to beat me up for that comment, but I believe he's doing a good job. We have to understand that the errors of yesteryear that were made, whatever bad decisions or financial bad decisions that were made, are the common realities of today. That those are the things that Mr. Knight and others have to deal with when we're talking about our power. And today, again, we're just talking about electricity and St. John right now. And electricity spans to the entire Virgin Islands. And what one of the things that I did is I took action and I sent a formal letter to the governor calling for a state of emergency. And I sent this letter because we're dealing with aging equipment, frequent outages, financial instability, and this is actually affecting families, businesses, healthcare services, and at this point it raises, in my opinion, to the level of an emergency. St. John, of all the three islands, well, some say that Water Island is the fourth, but St. John, in my opinion, is in the most dangerous position right now. The island depends on a single transmission cable from the island of St. Thomas, and there is no real backup system in place. So one failure can shut down and has shut down the entire island. And what I'm calling for in relation to the transmission of the letter that I sent to the governor is to declare the state of emergency. And this would allow us to move faster on solutions. It would coordinate across agencies. You have coordination across agencies, and it will bring in the federal support, advocating for, obviously, at some point, we need independent generation on St. John. That means the installation of a backup generator or two. We need battery storage on the island as well. And these are the things that the Water and Power Authority has also echoed in the sense of their most recent town hall, which they conducted on the island of St. John. And I want to thank Mr. Knight and his team for coming up to St. John and conducting the town hall. It is an important aspect of communication and responsibility. And I'm happy that his leadership team showed up. They listened to the people, they provided updates directly to the community. Mr. Knight and his leadership team took questions and shared information, which is something I appreciate. The town hall obviously gave residents the understanding of the work that is already happening, the projects that are being planned, and the challenges that still remain. And now at the same time, while I appreciate the engagement, I must put on the record that we also have to continue pushing for results. Because the people of the Virgin Islands, especially St. John, need to see some real improvements. So again, like I said, thank you to WAPA, but we will definitely keep them accountable on the improvements that they have provided to us and in their planning. Now, when it comes to potential solutions, that's something we always think about. We always think about how we can help, how can we assist the stakeholders who are responsible. As a legislator, what can I do by lobbying my colleagues to support something that I know and believe is important, and in this case, this is very important. I again encourage the governor of the Virgin Islands to push for the state of emergency on energy, to get the solutions that I laid out just a moment ago. But in addition to that, will be proposing a bill to repair one of four submarine cables. Right now, for the people that are listening, there are four submarine transmission cables that go from St. Thomas to St. John. Out of the four, only one is working. Okay? So only one transmission cable is working. So that means that if that cable goes down like it did before, the island goes out of power for 48, 72 hours or longer, because the reaction to assist is going to take time, coordination, communication, and of course, safety. You know, you just can't stick two wires together and then electricity is back on. And I give it up to the linemen and linewomen of WAPA, because they put themselves at risk and on the line, especially during these type of situations. The wrong move can be detrimental if you don't take your time and go through the proper procedures when trying to reestablish electricity. But I want to say we're going to be proposing to repair one of those submarine transmission lines, and we'll provide them with an appropriation. I've been, again, like I mentioned earlier, many discussions with the CEO of WAPA on what solutions can we provide, what can we do, what is the issue. Send me the information, let me look at the data. I want it in black and white, you know, and he's been very receptive, yes, very forthcoming, providing the information that I need, because data drives policy. And we just don't knee jerk and just jump up and do something without reviewing the information and the data. So the problem is that, obviously, as stated earlier, it depends on the transmission line. We only have one out of four. We're going to be slating to try to repair at least one by proposing this bill, so that when the power goes, or if there's an issue, there's a backup cable that can kick in and supply St. John with power. Right now, the entire island obviously is one failure away from a total outage once that one line goes down. But why this matters is because, you know, this impacts families, daily lives, businesses, emergency services, hospitals. Well, we don't have a hospital, but clinics, our clinic on St. John's, students. So one failure affects everything. And we really need to have some continuity in services, and our energy grid is very important when it comes in relation to that. So the appropriation would repair the cable in the junction box, and test for any issues with the cable. So we're waiting. I apologize. We're awaiting some other documentation from CEO Knight to make sure that when we draft the bill, it covers all of the information that is pertinent to providing this appropriation in order to repair this transmission line. So it will be a full diagnostic assessment of the cable, repair or replacement of the damaged sections, and specialized underwater marine operations, environmental compliance and permitting. You have to get permits for these things as well, to the listening and viewing audience. It's not just someone jumping in the water and deciding they're going to mess with the cable. You have to have the proper permitting as well. The testing and of the cable once it's live, and any upgrades to ensure that it has some long-term reliability. Um, in the bill, we plan to put that WAPA should submit a full plan within 30 days, because we just don't want them to say we're going to do this and then don't do it. This, we're talking about lives, but I know that CEO Knight is. I heard the passion in his voice, and we've had very candid discussions. He really means well, and is very serious about trying to fix this problem, and not only that, but transform the Water and Power Authority into a more green energy company. So another one of the other solutions that we're looking forward to, when power goes, we know that, especially once it's over 48 hours, we know that people can lose medication, people can lose food. It's a bad situation where you spend hundreds of dollars for food, or even more than that for medication, and then power goes, and then it goes for a certain amount of time, whether it's 48 to 72 hours, and then by then things start to go bad, if not already spoiled. One of the things that we tried to assist people with is information. While certain things affect our people, there are programs and there are services that exist within the current government of the Virgin Islands and the federal government, to assist individuals in situations similar to this. And one of the things that we did at the time is we tried to inform the general public that there was an option, especially for those who are on SNAP, because I ended up reaching out to the commissioner of the Department of Human Services, asking her specifically if there was any opportunity to have any emergency SNAP for the people. While my intent was to find out if it would be available to each and every person,
Correct.
I was then notified that that cannot happen unless, obviously, we're in an emergency situation, but that would come down from the federal government, not the local level. However, for those who were on SNAP, they have the opportunity to document if they lost something and fill out a waiver of loss of items. I can't recall the name of the waiver right now, but they would then be able to get subsidy or funding. And I made sure to send that out to as many people that I knew. Some people said, well, I'm not on SNAP. And I said, well, please send it to someone that you know who is, I know that I may not be able to help everyone right now, but don't think that I'm going to stop. But at the same time, you could pass the message forward, because I know it's probably somebody out there may need the assistance. And nothing precludes or stops an individual who's on SNAP, who may have a good amount of SNAP, from saying, man, I don't really need this, but since I got this extra, let me go give it to Judy. One could say that too. But we sent that out, and we were looking at how we could maybe potentially assist on the local level. And one of the conversations, too, many discussions with stakeholders, to include CEO Knight, because I asked him directly if there's any chance that WAPA would be able to credit the ratepayers with some sort of food assistance. Now, he cannot credit the ratepayers on their power bill if he's not charging them for anything, because power is gone, so he can't charge the ratepayer, even though the rates are a lot higher than they probably should be, because we're not focusing on green energy the way that we should.
Very high.
Very high, very high.
I just
But-
want to go back. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you
No
off.
problem.
About the SNAP program. It's called the replacement of benefits is misfortune affidavit.
The misfortune affidavit. Okay.
Yes.
And you can find that on the Department of Human Services website. For those of you who,
So those are the stipulations.
those are the stipulations. You can read them
Okay.
into the record.
The form must be completed within 10 days of the power outage. Eligibility worker must verify by a third party power outage for more than 4 hours. The amount requested does not suppress the allotted monthly benefits.
Mhm. Okay, thank you for that, Ms.
You're
Torres.
welcome.
So one of the other ways that we were trying to assist those individuals that are not on SNAP benefits is discussions, like I was saying earlier, before Ms. Torres gave everyone an update, through discussions with stakeholders and CEO Knight about providing the people with some sort of food loss assistance. Because we know that when power goes out for long periods of time, people lose food, families are forced to throw away groceries, spend money they didn't plan to spend, and it creates real financial stress, and it's irritable, especially during repeated outages.
Absolutely.
Because I've been in a situation myself where I bought some stuff, this was years ago, but I bought food, power went out, my groceries went bad, ended up getting more groceries and the power went again and, went bad again. So thank God that hasn't happened in many, many years, but what if, so that is a real issue that people will be facing any day now. And we want to look at what things we can do to create what we would want to call a sort of a food loss assistance voucher program. And what that is trying to provide an appropriation that would sit in a fund, right, from the local government. And when there is when we experience a power outage that lasts more than, let's say, 72 hours or 48 hours, 48 or 72, we're still working on the time frame. An individual, similarly to how you apply for the SNAP, would apply to get the voucher, and it'll be one voucher per household, and provide them with up to maybe $200 for the outage. Right now, there is nothing that a person could get other than SNAP recipients. One voucher per household so that they can buy food or water.
Medication.
Well, however they choose to your
Right.
point, yes.
Yeah.
If whatever they choose to utilize it for, would be, hopefully they would use it for the right things. Now, if we partner with stores, and create the vouchers in a way where, we don't just go down the road and buy alcohol or something like that. We wouldn't want to encourage the use of the voucher program for anything other than, so we would want to limit it to food and non-alcoholic beverages. So if there's an opportunity to partner with local businesses in this voucher program, that would definitely be the way that I believe it would work. So the program would be obviously administered to the Water and Power Authority. They would be able to if there's, let's say there is $200,000 in the account or more, depending on what you lost, you can get up to $200. Maybe some people may say $200 is not enough.
Right.
But
I just want to make it clear, this is not concrete. It's a
It's not.
discussion. That's
This-
what happens when you get with all stakeholders and constituents. you discuss everything, and it can take years to discuss and come up with an agreement. So
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear on the record.
This is a bill draft. After all these discussions that we've had in relation to power, this in relation to people losing food and medication, the way that the discussion warranted some sort of option, because right now the only option that really exists is for the individuals who have SNAP. Every other person is on their own, and that's the reality. If in fact, which I plan to work on and propose, a food loss assistance program or fund, which I would fund, which I would want to, with the help of my colleagues, fund through the budget stabilization fund, to allow maybe allocate 500,000, $1 million in there, so that if in fact, and have parameters in there to say that when the power goes for 72 hours or more, because by then you're losing things, you're losing medication, you're losing food. Similarly to an individual who has the option to apply through SNAP locally here in the Virgin Islands, they'll be able to apply, and of course you have to meet the requirements, apply, and be able to access. I mean, again, throwing the number $200 out. Maybe $200 is not enough for anything, but I'm saying they will be able to apply to purchase water, food, non-alcoholic beverages, or maybe replace the medication that they lost. The funds obviously will be protected and used only for the program. That's what we're talking about, not being able to use the funds for alcohol or anything like that. And also making sure that the funds don't expire after the end of the year. The funds will be available or accessible until they're expended. WAPA needs to track their outages. That's something I've asked for in hearings when they come before us. We need to get a proper data account of the outages that WAPA has experienced, whether it's this year, last year, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, as far back as we can go, because we need the data to see the trends and to justify to the federal government why, in fact, we're in a state of emergency. And this matters because people out here are really, really hurting. This is real hardship. When the system fails, the people are left to absorb the cost. And for me, I think having some sort of food loss voucher program that is funded by the local government, we put a certain amount of money in there, and you go through the process to apply. I think that's something that we should be able to do. I think that's something that would help people. I think it's something that hopefully my colleagues would want to support. And I'm planning to work on that and eventually bring that piece of legislation to include the transmission line repair for the island of St. John. Because again, there's only 4 transmission lines between St. Thomas and St. John, of which only 1 is working. So it is imperative that we repair or have a backup line until we can figure out how we can get additional assistance, federal assistance from the federal government to help us to replace the other 2 lines, if not all 4. That is my objective as of earlier this month, and now I say it live on this radio show. This is one of the priorities that I've moved to the forefront because of the dangerous situation that continues to wreak havoc in St. John when it comes to energy resilience and survivability. St. John already has to import everything, more so than St. Thomas or St. Croix, which have marine ports and airports. And the cost to import each thing that comes through there, whether it's containers or fees to go on the barge, which I was against with the Virgin Islands Port Authority, we incrementally pay a higher sum. And for us to get cut off, not that it's the fault of any one person at the Water and Power Authority, but they inherited the issue. But we really, really need to fix this problem. It's a problem that has persisted for far too long. And the fact of the matter is, locally, we do not, and I say it straight, we do not have the money that is required to fix the Water and Power Authority. That's why it's important for us to lobby the federal government for subsidy and support. This has to be done. It should be done. I, for one, will fight for it to be done. And I believe that I have colleagues in the 36th legislature that feel the same way. This energy crisis, in tandem with our geopolitical situation, as it were, creates a very dark cloud over these Virgin Islands when it comes to energy resilience and survivability. We know that we are at the cusp of potential war threats and otherwise. And the President of the United States of America is making decisions that obviously is affecting not only this country and its territories, but obviously other countries around the world. With oil and fuel prices fluctuating because of the geopolitical situation, it even puts us here in the Virgin Islands at greater risk. So it is very important. And again, I will sing and I will blow the conch shell, telling the governor that he needs to consider calling a state of emergency on the energy crisis of the Virgin Islands. Some will agree, some will not agree. But I will say this is something that needs to happen sooner than later. The longer we wait, and all of the tensions that continue to spike and arise throughout the country and other international countries pertinent to the United States of America and or oil or fuel, which apparently they're fighting over, we are caught in the crosspins or the crosshairs. Again, and I shout it out loud again, this needs to be done now. And I want to encourage Governor Bryan and his administration to please take my request that I wrote to him. What date was that? That was on the 20th.
Yes.
I asked him to consider it because the longer we wait, it becomes worse for us. And while I commend Governor Bryan for all of the work that he has done, trying to deal with the Water and Power Authority, we still haven't moved the needle as far as it needs to go. We need the delegate to Congress to get involved, the governor, the 36th legislature of the Virgin Islands, the PSC, all relevant stakeholders, the Energy Office. We all need to have a series of meetings to strategize as a territory what we should be doing to fix this problem with our energy crisis. So we're almost wrapping up in the next 6 minutes. Ms. Torres, was there any other updates that you would like to provide to the people when pertinent to contacts if they need to reach us?
If you would like to text us, you can text us at 340-725-4138. Again, the number you can text us at is 340-725-4138. And I think you covered a lot. Energy is major, power outages. You mentioned medicine, food, education. Our kids can't go to school sometimes, a lot of times. My phone actually went out. It was out for a few hours and I had an SOS and I was frantic. I was actually going crazy because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't work. I'm not getting calls. I can't make outgoing calls. So this is major. And you would think this day and age, they would have come up with a good plan and had everybody come together years ago, right? You're asking them now to come together and come up with a strategy. This should have been done years ago. To me, I understand money is, a barrier at times, but you have to have those collaborative meetings at the same time to know what's going on. Because if we don't know what's going on, especially in the legislature, to appropriate funds, then we can't do anything, and this needs to stop. I'm just saying, because again, it's critical all across the territories as far as power outages, phones, medicines, kids, elderly. We heard an incident yesterday at the town hall where there was an infant, their milk needs to be warmed. I mean, it's just heart-wrenching. Yes, I appreciate Mr. Knight going out there and speaking. But I always tell people this: actions speak louder than words. Mm-hmm. So I want to see action. I don't want to hear talk anymore. That's just how I feel at this point.
Yeah. So a lot of people similarly feel the same way that you do. There was a level of frustration that was expressed. And I give no one wrong. Everyone has the right to say what they need to say.
Right.
Voices are not muffled. We respect everyone's opinion. But in such matters, it's sometimes you have to know when to tone down, even though it's frustrating, and keep your composure and focus. Because making those hard decisions requires focus, a level of calm, so that you can think about the issue at hand and communicate with all relevant stakeholders. We need to have a collective discussion, not this siloed discussion, a collective discussion with all of the energy stakeholders, to include all of the leaders of the Virgin Islands, to include our delegate, and figure out how we collectively as a Virgin Islands are going to resolve the energy crisis that we seem to be dealing with and have been dealing with for decades. You go to other Caribbean nations right now and you see that they have surpassed us.
And you said decades. That's sad.
Yeah, they've surpassed us in energy resiliency.
Right.
They have found other methodologies of creating power. Now, not everyone may be appeasing to the Virgin Islands, because, for instance, in the Dominican Republic, they burn trash for energy. That may not work here because we care about our environment. Even though the Dominican Republic still has good beaches, nice mountains, nice rivers, and so forth. But, for our islands, I don't see that happening. But there are different methods of creating energy, and we need to research them. We need to implement them in order to subsidize the grid, because the grid is there's too much strain on the grid. It's outdated.
Right.
And we need to find a way to find some parity between the two.
I know we have a few more seconds, but I just want to throw this out there. I stay silent, but I do speak the truth. But I do want to say, when you cut our resource like power, food, medicine, we get in survival mode.
That's
And
right.
this is where all this frustration and anger comes from. Like, really? It's been a decade? Really? Come on. You know, so I'm just going to cut it off there because I don't want to get too serious. And we have a few seconds.
So with that said, for those who are listening, if you want to reach out to any of my offices, my St. John office is 340-776-6285. St. Thomas office 340-693-3571. St. Croix office 340-712-2278. And I want to thank 970 AM WSTX for having us. Thank you, Josh. We appreciate it. And good night to everyone.
And I want to thank our staff. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Love you. Mwah.
All right.